Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for, first of all, being patient. We had some technical difficulties. It's the work from home virtual world at its best, but super excited about this panel, really focused on founder-led selling, growth, customer development, all those sort of tactics that we use early on as an early stage startup to really start to figure out how do I start to acquire customers and start to develop kind of the foundation to scale. I'm super excited to be joined by some of the brightest minds in technology. We'll go ahead and start off with Kumar, if you want to just kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into this crazy startup world.
So I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area for the last 7 years. I used to work on like hard tech engineering stuff. And now I have run a small 24-person engineering and growth company. And my specialty is that I do sort of aggressive tactical growth experiments for companies.
Awesome. Scott, how's it going? I know you're doing a lot of stuff now. Early at Sales Hacker, Outreach, now started a fund that's focused on investing in SaaS businesses that do go to market. I won't steal your thunder, but go for it.
No, man, thanks for having me, and kudos for you putting these on. I know how much work goes into these virtual events, so happy to be here. I like to say that I try and spend my life solving interesting problems with interesting people, and where that's taken me right now is I'm currently the head of strategic engagement at Outreach, a unicorn company out of Seattle in the sales engagement space. As you alluded to, I'm now an operating partner of a new fund called GTM Fund. It's a VC fund made up of go-to-market leaders from some of the fastest growing tech companies out there, like Slack, Twilio, Salesforce. And yeah, I also write about up and coming growth practices, both personal and revenue focused, in a weekly newsletter called The Forecast, and co-host a podcast called the Sales Engagement Podcast, which is all about utilizing sales technology to beat your revenue targets.
Awesome. Sean, real quick, tell the folks a little bit about your background.
Yeah, 5-time sales founder, 3 exits, launched GrowthX as a seed stage venture fund and a global startup accelerator focused on product market fit. GrowthX Academy is a way to train people in sales, marketing, and design roles to work in the startup community. Most recently, done about 140 investments in B2B SaaS companies, and most recently acquired a corporate venture builder called User Technologies, or U.Plus. And now we're focused on building startups for corporates.
Awesome. Well, Sean, let me ask you, you've invested in a bunch of companies, you've been that sales founder. Why should founders really sell, like underneath it, philosophically and also like operationally? Why is it really important that when you start that you do that early selling?
I think, as a founder, if you're not the one doing it, what are you doing? You need to understand your business better than anyone else if you're going to have any chance at growing it. As a VC, if you're a founder and you haven't sold your first cohort of customers, I'm not putting money in you. I don't have any confidence. I don't even like traditional VC decks. I like to see the sales deck, because if you can't sell me on what you're doing, the rest of it doesn't matter. And then I think from a talent perspective, as you're trying to build a team of amazing people, I don't know if you're going to gain and garner the respect that you should if you haven't demonstrated that you can do it yourself. Just like any good leader, if they're not willing to pick up a shovel, it's hard to get the right kinds of people to respect them and to follow them.
And Kumar, you've started a company, you've exited yourself. Well, do you agree with Sean? And what's your kind of take on that founder doing that early sort of selling and engaging that growth motion?
Yeah, absolutely. They always say no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. So you need to, I think of that analogy as like, you need to figure out what's the uncertain thing, because when it comes to tech, especially web tech, there's nothing unfathomable on a computer. Like, you can move a pixel, you can shake a database cell, but that analog world of going out and finding out what the truth is, like for me, it's a lot like doing experiments in the real world. And so it's the closest thing to truth if they can put $1 in something, right? Because then they'll have skin in the game on it, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to understand how in line with reality the founder's mind is with what the customer actually needs. And in some cases, I even want to see them say things like, "Oh, we don't need that feature. Customers request it, but it doesn't actually matter for X, Y, and Z reason." So it's not just doing everything the customer is saying. It's knowing intimately what is a world-class experience going to be, and what does it need versus what it doesn't need. And the only way that happens is if they talk to a large breadth of customers.
We were talking about the MVP a little earlier in the previous session. Scott, what would you say? What's your take on this? And what would you say are some early steps? Maybe I'm the founder who I don't have sales experience. Maybe I've been technical. What would you say I could do early on to start to move in that direction?
Yeah, I think no one can sell the vision like the founder, whether you're technical or you're more revenue focused. The raw passion that is going to come out is very difficult to replicate. I will say that passion needs to be focused. So if they don't have any sales experience, you do need to find frameworks that you can leverage. I'm with Sean that I like when they talk it through like a sales deck. They treat me like a customer. Don't give me this investor deck. And I think I've thought through a lot of frameworks of the best way founders to sell. And I think Andy Raskin's The Greatest Sales Deck Ever Made still holds up. If you'll remember, it went viral, I think, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's pretty simple. It's name a big relevant change in the world. Number 2, show there'll be winners and losers. Number 3, tease the promised land. Number 4 is introduce features as kind of magic gifts for overcoming obstacles to the promised land. And then number 5 is present evidence that you can make that story come true. So for the non-technical founders out there, that 5-step process still holds up.
Awesome.
Good. I would like to make you a question too, Sean. And we've been talking about founders being sellers and understanding better than anybody else the market and the startup. But how long should a founder sell? And when do you think is that specific moment in which it's time to hire a dedicated salesperson?
The simple answer is once they've demonstrated product market fit, I think it's time to start having a conversation about who else you want to get involved. Obviously, the dynamics of a product in a market and the buying behaviors and the sales cycles, the complexity of the sale, the price of what you're selling, the time and resources required to acquire a customer, all of those factors weigh into that as well. But to me, the formula is quite simple in terms of how I explain it. It's not easy to do, but the fastest path to product market fit is word of mouth. And the fastest way to get word of mouth is to get a raving fan of a customer. And the fastest way to get a raving fan of a customer is to define a very clear pilot with that customer or series of customers that shows what success looks like for everyone and that you can measure it. And the way to do that is to establish a market milestone of identifying an initial customer profile and a value hypothesis that they can understand. If you can't tell me in 25 words or less what you do for me, and that you know who I am, what problem I have, and that you might be able to solve it in this way, you're making your life much more difficult than you need to.
Now, Kumar, if you think of, product market fits come up a lot in them. And so when I think now, I kind of knew this, but it was interesting. I didn't really necessarily always map founder-led selling that early with product market fit. But of course, that's what we're trying to kind of figure out there. When you think about that, that early motion for the founder, does product market fit mean, what does that actually mean? We were talking about this a little earlier around the MVP, but this is taking it to the next level. Like, how do we actually know we've achieved this product market fit?
So I think the market's also changed. Like compared to 10 years ago, there's now 30 million software developers on the planet. There's frameworks, there's a lot more stuff. And so now you have to go, when you go into the marketplace, there's two things I want to see companies have, like minimal lovable product, which means they're already raving about it. The sort of product market fit thinking, I think it's changed. I think it's shifted because the number of software developers, you're adding another 1 million to 2 million. You have another 1.5 billion people that are going to come on the internet, very shortly. So I think that game has changed. The other thing I like to see a company have is, especially if they're in B2B, there's no reason why they shouldn't have a full scraped database of every relevant potential customer before they've even started selling out. There's no reason before they bring on that first salesperson, they shouldn't have started like reaching out on Twitter, LinkedIn, email, anything they could do to sort of blitz and see what happens. I think they should have that lead database, maybe even before they build the company, because they want to find out how naive they are or how on point they are with the product.
Yeah, and I would say that early on in my career, I skipped a lot of those steps, right? I didn't, it's almost like I didn't want the idea to be invalidated, because I was so keen on going, no, I don't want to fucking work for anybody. I am the next, Bill Gates or whatever, you know what I mean? And fuck this. Now, 20 years later, I'm like, the only way I'm going to do a startup is if it has these particular variables, right? If you think about, let's think about like kind of that early sales motion, Scott. Super early. What should I be tracking? Like, how built out should it be? I don't want to over engineer things, but I need something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when we look at the early sales and growth motion, it's not always pretty. It's very scrappy. You're calling in favors. You're doing the proof of concepts. You're begging people, hey, test out our product. Like we love it. We think you'll love it. You're maybe giving stuff away for free at the beginning. You're trying to create those raving fans, that momentum. You're hitting up your friends on Twitter, like Kumar said. You're calling in all the favors, and then hopefully, when you do all of that, you're then gonna have maybe one or two, raving fans that pop out after a lot of hard work, and then you're gonna do kind of like a spider web approach from there. It's like, okay, we tackled this industry. Well, can we go to their competitor or someone else in that industry, because now we have a compelling story to tell. And you'll slowly over time create spider webs, and it should, spider out from there. And then things that you should track early on, like just the LTV CAC ratio, all that stuff, you need to be looking at as a founder. But I think the number one thing I would focus on, and Sean highlighted, is like, can we create a few raving fans in the market? Make everything easier if you can.
And Sean, what would you say is like that first set of tools that I should really sort of put together to deploy this motion early on? Is like there like a early stage sort of sales stack?
Yeah, I mean, from a B2B perspective, you have to let your outreach channels that you define based on the initial customer profile inform what that should be. But it doesn't have to be anything expensive. I mean, pipe drive and grow bots or something like that, right? You need to just test it, build your funnel, define the exit criteria at every stage of your funnel, keep it very simple, and then start running water through the pipes, look for the leaks, and figure out what you need to do. But more importantly, you got to reverse engineer the funnel from the bottom up, define on what I call that initial market milestone. If my objective in the first 12 months is to get 2 raving fan customers, how many qualified opportunities do I need to get 2? How many qualified conversations or interactions do I need to be performing with business accounts to get to 2? And then how many do I need to reach out to get those conversations? So reverse engineering that from the bottom up based on the resources that you have at your disposal, not on what you want, but what's realistic. Because you're just one person as a founder, or maybe 2, and you've got a whole big world out there. I've never seen anybody go through an initial customer profile exercise correctly and have a market that is so narrow that there's not enough people to fill the funnel and meet that initial market milestone. It's not possible. The world's too big. So those are the 4 stages for me in an initial market milestone. What's a win over what period of time? What's a qualified opportunity look like? What's a qualified interaction look like? And then how many prospects do I need to put on the top of that funnel? And then I put in simple, lightweight stuff, sales and marketing automation that can track it. And then I go, and then I learn and iterate based off of that. Most of what you're going to learn, however, is going to be offline, not online. And so it's really important for you to collect all that unstructured insight and feedback from your early customer interactions and use that to your benefit to hone your message, to hone your channel, to hone your customer profile, hone your initial proof of concept or value hypothesis, and then how to measure that out the other side. Awesome.
And we'll wrap up here in a second, as I know, thank you so much. I know you guys are really, really busy, and I appreciate your time. Kumar, I've been asked this question 1,000 times, and I sort of kind of give an opinion, but I'm not always clear on this. And it's like, what should be that early marketing mix, that growth motion when you're, pre-product market fit, and you kind of have to maybe, or do you have to create some content? Do you do some paid? Do you do organic? Do I do social? Do I do focus groups? Like, what does that early motion marketing mix kind of look like? And when do I know that I'm doing the right things?
Yeah, so I have like a stack that I recommend to people. So I always think, like, in terms of getting in front of customers, I always think like scrape, crawl, blitz. So I have a link that I'll share here that has a list of all the scraping tools that I've compiled that you can use to scrape a list of potential customers. And there's so many different ways to get in front of them. Some of the other tools I like for preparing the B2B SaaS startup, one of them is called Enterprise Ready. .io. So it's kind of like a benchmark of what your landing page should look like and what it should say. I like using things like this to get in front of customers quickly. And so once I've designed a landing page for a startup, then I'm like, okay, we need to figure out what are all the channels that potential customers hang out on. And when I reach out to customers, what I'll tell them is like, I hired some guy to build this. Does this make sense? Even though I built it, because I want them to critique it honestly. So I'm looking for unbiased feedback, and the way to do that is I bias the sample, right? So I tell them, I hired somebody in some foreign country to do this, and like, does it make sense? English isn't my first language. That's what I'll write in forums, and I'll get lots of honest feedback about how off or on the problem I am. So those are some of the things I think about. These are two of the tools I like, but if anyone has questions, they can tweet to me, and I don't mind answering.
Awesome. Well, that's actually a really good segue into our conclusion here. If folks want to follow you, I know you're big on Twitter and are constantly sharing insights. What's your Twitter handle? And I know you also have a blog. What are some of those channels that folks can reach you or consume your content on? Awesome. Cool. So folks, check out the chat there, and you can follow Kumar there. Scott, how about yourself?
Hey man, I'm on LinkedIn, Scott Barker. I create a lot of stuff on there, and then you can type in the Forecast newsletter if you want to, learn a little bit more about personal growth hacks and revenue growth hacks. And last thing I'll leave everyone with is just remember that there's so many incredible resources out there right now. Don't think you have to go out this alone. There's resources like Sales Hacker, Modern Sales Pros, Revenue Collective, Sales Impact Academy. There's so many resources out there. So if you're not fully revenue focused, all the answers are out there. The old good artists copy, great artists steal holds true for sure.
Nice. Sean, why don't you take us home?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on the Google. I'm on Twitter at Sean A. Sheppard. Please feel free to connect with me there. Send me any message. If you send me an email or a LinkedIn message, just reference that you saw me here. As you can imagine, I get a lot of connection requests, and most of them are lazy. so I don't respond. But if you give me context, I'm happy to do it and be helpful. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. For the audience out there, we're going to go and shift over to the 5th session. I'm going to teleport you over, but I'm also going to post the link in the chat to our panelists. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience, and have a great night.
Great night.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, brother.
Bye, guys.